So now that you have a table running in DynamoDB, what can you do with it? Well, let's look at a quick example of using the Java SDK to work with DynamoDB. You will find extremely useful samples from within the Eclipse toolkit. In fact, they have a DynamoDB sample that you can use. This is pretty useful if you want to try different operations with DynamoDB, and it covers pretty much, creation, reads and writes to DynamoDB, as well as error handling, a bunch of useful stuff. So I would highly recommend you check this out if you have any doubts on how to use Java SDK for DynamoDB. So I have a demo set up here with the Java DynamoDB. Okay, now we have a sample application in the Java SDK to work with DynamoDB. So let's dive right in. We declare this DynamoDB sample class. We initialize a static DynamoDB client, DynamoDB, and we have this method to initialize the connection to make sure we pick up the credentials from the properties file. These are examples that are present in the code samples throughout the AWS Eclipse toolkit. So in our main function, we make sure that the initialization works correctly, and then we assign the table name that we already created in DynamoDB, and it's active users. To define an item, we use the packages present in the DynamoDB v2 model. So a DynamoDB item is a map containing string values to an attribute value, and an attribute value is a class that's contained in the DynamoDB v2 model. So we initialize this using a custom function that we've created. This creates a map between the string and attribute values, and what we do is we simply convert these raw string types into these attribute value for each attribute that we use. So we work with the user ID, the type, and the location when we create this map, and we send that back. So that's set up as our item that we want to put into the table. Each time you want to put an item to the table, you need to create a put item request. It's part of the SDK. For this, you need to specify a table name as a string and the item, which is the map of the string and attribute values. For this, you will receive a put item result whenever you perform the actual put item operation using this put item request object, and we just print that out. Once we finish putting the item, we perform a scan operation on DynamoDB. Now, scan allows you to go through the entire table, or check for some specific attribute condition, and then return the results. So scans are not efficient since they don't deal with indexed values, and we don't necessarily have a rigidly defined schema in DynamoDB. So when you typically use DynamoDB for an application, do not rely on scans as a method to retrieve data. You should engineer your data such that you will be able to directly retrieve an item through the primary key. Since we're just using DynamoDB to store a few items here, a scan request is totally fine. So we just specify a scan request, we get a result back from DynamoDB, and we just print that result out. And as usual, since these actual operations on DynamoDB can have exceptions, especially as an Amazon service exception, we try to catch these and print out what these error messages may be like. So we're ready to simply execute this program. So let's just go ahead and run it. So it has printed two results. The first result is coming from the operation that we did with DynamoDB to add an item, which just sent back an empty result. When we did the scan, we got back an item. We see that there's the individual identifiers of the attributes inside the item, the location, user ID, and type, and they were assigned the actual values that we put in there. So here, this is just a simple example to show you how to use DynamoDB inside Java. You can use the other SDKs to do exactly the same operations in whichever language you choose. That's it.